Angela and James Mitchell, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, first of all. So yeah, I've been a counselor for 20 years, working with a variety of people, women, abuse survivors, children, now couples. James.
Been a transformational coach working through a lot of men's work, a lot of transformational emotional development for men. And naturally, that applies into this relationship side of things. And so, what we do is we blend coaching and counseling together to work with what we call ride or die couples to experience the most amazing, remarkable lifestyle they can now, full of deep connection and intimacy.
Amazing. So, what inspired you to follow this path?
Great question.
This is what we love to do for our own relationship. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Okay, so you're testing it out on yourselves and then kind of applying,
Oh
making
yeah, we
improvements.
are. Yes, we are the lab rats for all things we recommend to other couples. We try it first. Um, yeah, we've been together for 15 years. It turns out relationships aren't easy. Whoever said that was a lie. No, I don't know if anyone ever said that. But
Mhm.
yeah, and so I've been a counselor for years, obviously, and so wanting to just work with people to help them, yeah, become their best, fullest potential, right? To find the divine inside themselves, right? And then working together, we've done a lot of work and invested in our relationship a lot and then found things that have helped us just thrive. And each year of our marriage, I would say, I hope he says the same thing, maybe he doesn't, but seems to get better and better because we found the tools and the and leaned in during the hard parts. And so now it feels like we found all these things that can help, and it's part passion and part almost duty. Like if we have this information and this stuff that can help other people, like I feel a duty to bring it to other people as well. And we love doing it. It's fun work.
So you're both doing your work separately, and then you've just come to join forces, and you're still doing work separately as well?
Somewhat. Yeah. Most of what we do is with couples though.
and the separate part comes in is that there's two people in a couple, and so we'll
Ah,
separate out.
okay.
And if we work with a couple that is traditional and identifies male, female, whatever we want to say about that, we'll typically find one of those partners is more resonant to each one of us in a different capacity. And so that's
Yes.
where the one-on-one work comes in. Angela actually left all of her other jobs. Well, like, I can't get rid of the parenting jobs. I can't
Yeah.
actually can't take that, but she got rid of her other daytime job
To just do
um,
primarily
back in May.
couples
So
work.
yeah,
Yeah.
full time on this now.
Oh, amazing. So you said earlier about relationships not being easy. I think I'm a victim of all this Insta psychology. You know, and you see all these carousels of about and analyzing relationships and love. And I think there's this perception or maybe a view that everything has to flow when it's the right person. What would you
Mm.
say to that? Because people say that a lot, you know, when it's the right person or the right relationship, that it can all flow. And if it doesn't, if there's resistance, that can how can you
Yeah.
find that balance and how can you know like when is it worth working
Great.
on?
Yeah. Let me go first.
You please. Yes.
So first I like to think I kind of called James in. I made a list. So I was
Mhm.
very intentional from the beginning. I made a list of 10 things I was looking for in a partner, and the first five were not negotiable. So that did really help me weed through a lot of things quickly. And because sometimes you got like good chemistry with someone and you're like, oh, maybe, but then it's like, they really don't have this non-negotiable. They don't want to have children and I do, or
Mhm.
they're not, whatever, they're not secure. And I felt like that was an important quality in someone because it solved a lot of other issues if they were secure in themselves. Anyway, so I had my list and that helped, I think, to be intentional.
Is that
And
when you were dating? You had the list when you were
yes,
dating.
yes, when
Okay.
I was dating, yes. And so I think there is some to like really getting clear on what you want. And then that clarity can help things be easier in the beginning. Right. So I would say the beginning of our relationship wasn't necessarily difficult.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't classify our relationship as difficult now. However, it does take effort, right? It does take work. Just like, if you want to be healthy, right? You probably need to put in some exercise. You probably need to choose some healthy foods, right? There's things you need to do on a daily basis that is going to keep your body healthy. And I think the same thing for a relationship. And then also life happens,
Mhm.
right? So you can be a super solid couple and then life throws something at you, and that can be put stress and strain on a relationship. What would you say?
that initial connection, I really feel like deserves to be easy,
Mm,
just to show that we can have that, right? The attraction, the connection, just all that new energy, right? We all know what that looks like. And then that turns into love, and we're moving towards our goals. And we can get into this idea of creation intimacy, which I hope we'll double click on a little bit later. And that first year of marriage really, I believe, has the ability to be one of the easiest years. This idea that it's the first year is the hardest, meh. And what we've noticed is what happens over time. We tend, Dr. Terry Real, he may or may not actually be a doctor, but he is a relationship coach, therapist, and he says we marry our unfinished business. And so at some point if we're going to be in this thing for life, no matter how easy and smooth the connection is, at some point we begin to mirror each other's unfinished business and the work that is being invited for us to do to continue to maintain that initial ease of connection.
So I think like that initial bit is like you're kind of establishing the reward and incentive, for actually working on it. Would you say that's true?
I love that. Yes, I love that look on it. I think that's,
Oh,
yeah,
well,
beautiful.
we're gonna use that one. Thanks a lot, V.
Quote me on that. I guess that's
Yeah.
something I should think about a lot. But I was actually speaking to some friends who were really in the kind of divine feminine space and a bit princessy vibes, and we were talking about, the list. This is why what you mentioned, the list. And sometimes I wonder what's more important, like having a list and knowing what you want, or falling in love with a person. Because I think for me, I've not been intentional enough, and I'm paying the price kind of thing in my life. But then I know some friends who have this list and they know what they want. And then when they see the partners falling short, that's going to be the end of the relationship. Whereas I think I've fallen in love with people really and not really had a list. What would you say to that? Like, how important is the mold and versus the person, you know?
Yeah.
I did hear you say you're maybe paying the price for not
Yeah,
having.
well, there you go.
So, I'll answer your question if you want, but it feels like you might have answered it yourself.
Have to hire you.
Yeah, and I think my list, for instance, had 10 things, and only 5 of them were non-negotiable, right?
Okay.
And because those would have felt like things I was settling or compromising my values
Mhm.
for, right? And then the other 5 were like the cherry on top, the icing on the cake, right? It'd be really great too if they had these things,
Okay.
right? So I think there's some room for flexibility. I think anytime we get too strict or stringent on things,
But that clarity also makes sure you get what you want,
mhm.
right? The universe in all of her glory is going to give you like little bits of opportunity to say, oh, never mind, I didn't really mean that, right? It's going to give you breadcrumbs when you really want the full loaf of bread. You're like, hey, I really want, we're meat eaters, right? So I really want a steak and Brussels sprout dinner, right? And I'm starving, okay? And we're trying to get to this dinner, get home so I can cook it. And then I drive by McDonald's. Oh, there's food. I'm starving. Universe is going, you're hungry. Do you want food or did you really want that steak and Brussels sprouts? Right. And so that intentionality can make sure that we don't stop short on the way to what we truly want.
Yeah, because it's funny to talk about food because I'm a vegan and I always thought that it would be too difficult. If that was part of my top 5, that would be impossible because you're really, reducing the pool of opportunities there. So I started my own vegan community in Barcelona. We've got 3,400 members. And I've been out with a couple of vegans and just the actual experience was just amazing to go to a restaurant and realize that they weren't making a sacrifice. So I've always felt that with meat eating partners in the past, that they were wanting to get chicken on the way home or something like that,
Yeah.
Whereas it was a full culinary experience going out with a vegan. And I started to think maybe I should have that in my list now.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely would make cooking at home a little easier if you
Yeah, and because I just couldn't deal with meat in the fridge. Like just like
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
And if you ever have a partner who's into leather, like you won't have to talk about getting like the cactus made instead of the cow made. Like you're going to be on the same page with all these things.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. So how do you find working together? Because I find a lot of couples work together, and then I know a couple who do lots of retreats and stuff, and they have a rule where they don't speak about work after 8 o'clock or something. Do you find that there's a blurry line between work and life because your work is based on your life? Do you find that?
yeah. I think generally how we've approached that. So we have a weekly meeting as a couple, which we
Hmm.
do on Sundays, which is about life. And every now and then, like we're tempted to talk about work stuff at our family, our relationship meeting.
Creeps
And
up.
yeah, it creeps in. And usually me is the one who's going, we got to wait, save that tomorrow for the business meeting, right? So then we have our business meeting on Monday mornings where we talk about the
Okay.
business. So we have some structures in place where we try to separate that out. I think we did a mostly good job about it.
Yeah. When we got to Peru, I remember having a moment of overwhelm slash frustration slash probably just a temper tantrum, just having a little
Mhm.
tantrum about this lack of separation and just like, I need more separation. And that helped us to, because it was really fun and exciting at first. And we love the work we do. We love the people. We work in love, right? We work
Mm,
in sex, intimacy, and love. Like, what greater topic,
mm,
And so that was fun for a while. And then we realized that separation is important. And it helps us to enjoy working together more.
mm.
We rock at managing a household, a life, three kids, and that aspect together. And we've had the opportunity to learn and work really hard at being at a point where we not just can work together, but actually enjoy it and want to. And I'd say we've tipped the scales to like
Mostly.
mostly that way now.
Yeah, but it does. You're right. It takes effort to separate it. And usually one of us going, oops, like we're slipping into talking about business during family time. Let's back that up. And oftentimes, like James said, it's something we're excited about when it does come up.
Mm.
But still we're like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's talk about that on Monday.
Okay. And so can you tell us any of the modalities that you've created together that you can share with our audience about
Mm.
fashion or just tips in general?
Sure. So we really work kind of, our model is kind of having this two prongs to a really successful, epic life and
Mm,
relationship. And we see that as part, kind of this strategic planning, this coming up with, we call it the relationship North Star, right? What is this life and relationship, this vision you have that you want to create? And we, well, the two
mm.
prongs are that, and then this intimacy and connection. Okay. So the
Okay.
relationship, North Star, the strategic planning. James has a background of being an entrepreneur. He's been an
Would that be
entrepreneur.
what was that referred to like your life, how your life is set out or your family?
All of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like family planning. So in that section, it's how are we doing with our kids? What do we want to happen with them? Are they doing sports? How are they doing emotionally? Like what's necessary there? Financial planning, right? So if
Mm,
there's any debt reduction to moving into like what's our 1, 3, and 5 year plan? Travel, right? Even
mm,
even that, like what are our plans this year? And we have a lot of people and family that love us. And so when are we going to go visit them? When are we going to do our own stuff? That's and then also like getting to the point where we're, at the financial wealth that we want, right? And
mm,
being able to contribute and give back, right? That's the idea. And so to build that leg of this, that whole thing is the strategic plan. That's like when we call each other a partner, right? And I'm not a huge proponent of calling my spouse a partner, but if I
mm,
am, it's because we are partners in this business of our marriage. We are bringing in money like a
mm,
business and we are investing it and spending it like a business. So how is that coming together?
And also where we put our time, right? What are our priorities? What is this life we're wanting to create together?
Yeah. The
Um,
house, right? The dream house. The
mm,
second component is what makes it all worth it, though, Venus.
mm,
Like the second side is, oh, we're connected. We have intimacy and we can build this beautiful life together that one, we're going to actually enjoy when we get there.
mm.
And two, we're not going to have to give it all away at some point because we decided that you weren't the right person because I wasn't willing to work on myself or vice versa when things got hard, managing the tension of call it an empire of whatever size you choose.
Yeah, so those are kind of the two prongs we work in is this what's our relationship North Star and how are we getting there, creating this life of our dreams? And then potentially more importantly, how are we staying connected and on the same team and having deep intimacy together so that, like you said, so all of that other side is worth it, right?
Mm.
And even some of that strategic planning side is, helping couples get their life in order in a way that it allows the space for connection and intimacy, right?
Mm.
Um,
Cool. Yeah, something I've learned quite recently is how conflict it can be such an incredible thing, like with non-violent communication, like just getting to the depth of why someone has a reaction or has a certain trigger and how that can really, make create more vulnerability, more connection. And I was talking to a couple of friends like this, and they're like, how can you not get angry? And I'm not someone who gets angry in my most recent relationships. I'm kind of excited about like what can we learn from this, that kind of thing. Do you have any tips about conflict and how to handle it?
Sure.
Absolutely. I'm probably, and by probably I mean definitely the one that creates a little bit more conflict in our
Mhm.
relationship. I have a tendency to get overwhelmed, frustrated. I have a tendency to get frustrated, and then it just
Mhm.
kind of like I'm having conflict with this other thing, this person on the phone is trying to fix my, technology, and then like the conflict, just that energy spills over onto Angela,
Oh, okay.
and so which terribly, terribly affects our intimacy and connection.
Mm.
Right. And that's the most important thing to me is to get to experience all types of intimacy, and connection. And then when that conflict comes up, it gets in the way until, thank you to Sharon, our counselor, big plug for our counselor who helps us really dive into the bottoms and the depths of these things is the what's underneath it. Like, where's this
Mm.
thing come
Yeah.
from? And
Mm.
for us, it's very important to have a third party walking us through that process because I can't do
Mhm.
that for Angela and she cannot do that for me.
That's a really
That's
great big tip
insightful.
then. So every couple, even yourselves, need another pair of eyes to or someone
Yeah.
to guide you.
Yeah,
Mm.
that idea you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle, right?
Mm.
Sometimes you need someone on the outside going, oh, right. We had to that point, we had a couple we were working with, and so we help couples like, what is the layer deeper? Because usually the surface level conflict is not really what we're
Mm. Yeah.
about,
Mm.
something underneath. And we had a couple, they were arguing a lot over the mother was living with them. She was elderly, living with them. And the wife was having a lot of trouble and conflict, and was creating conflict in the marriage about the mother-in-law living with them. And when we dug in and found, like, went that layer deeper, the wife felt like she had a limited time with her husband. They were aging as
Mm.
well. They were now getting towards retirement age, and she was feeling like they weren't able to travel and have the quality time together as a couple that she was expecting because of the
Mm.
mother-in-law living with them. And when the husband was able to see, oh, it's actually because she wants to spend time with me because she
Oh,
loves me, right? He had a
okay.
lot more compassion for why she was frustrated about the mother living with them, right? So oftentimes when we go that layer deeper and we get at what's the hurt, what's the fear that's underlying it, we
Mhm.
found it can really then build compassion for your loved one, your beloved, that, oh, this is coming from this place of usually love or fear.
Mm.
So
Illuminating,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah.
Wow.
I'd say other thing for conflict would be we have a similar to nonviolent communication model that we use a lot, and it's the I noticed, uh,
Okay.
and then we do the story in my head
Are
is
you familiar with that
Uh,
one?
no, but I know the non-violent. I know the fact or
yes,
the observation and the
yeah,
feeling. I know that's the
yep.
four stages of non.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do in ours, which is, it's similar to nonviolent, but we do I noticed, and then the
Uh,
story in my head is, and that one
okay.
to me is
Uh,
so important because, right, it's
mm.
acknowledging that you did this thing and I created a story about it that may
Yeah.
or may not even be accurate, but it's from my perspective, right? And if I share that with him, it gives him a chance to then, like, acknowledge and go, oh, that's what was going on. And here's what I meant by that, right? Or here was what was going on my side of it. So we get better understanding. And then I feel, right? So I
Mm.
notice in my head is I feel, and then next time and making the request of what
Mm.
I would like to happen differently. And what we often found is what your partner is requesting is often more doable than what you had in your own head.
Oh, okay. That's
About
interesting.
yeah, it's like, I was upset because he was getting home late from work and dinner was on the table and he hadn't communicated, right? And I'm not asking him to be home every night on time because I know with his previous line of work that was difficult. All I was asking for was a text.
Mm.
And he was like, "Oh, that's all you want is a text to say I'm going to be late?" Yeah, I can do that, right?
Yeah.
And so the request was clear
Because
Mm.
without that, you would feel how?
without
If I wouldn't text you, how would you feel?
unimportant,
Mm.
unvalued, not respected,
And
right?
I'm out there hustling, trying to make the money and feed the family, and then like I'm getting hit back with now I'm being disrespectful. So that
Mm.
causes a lot of continued conflict if we don't get to what's underneath it. And at the core, what's underneath it is people wanting to be seen and people wanting to be heard.
And just connect as well. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And once, and you know, it can be challenging for me to hear those requests because I get
Mm,
defensive, like I'm,
mm,
you know, out there like blah blah blahing or whatever. And so that's just to remember that a remembrance always that we're really working on the same team towards the same goal. And
mm,
as long as we can take that time to slow down and really connect and see her and feel her on that without taking it personally, without making it about me. She's the one who feels disrespected. And if I
mm,
make it about me, then all of a sudden our conflict is going to extend further and further.
mm.
So to continue to let it be about her heart, or whenever I'm the one in conflict, about my heart, and that helps us get through fast.
Amazing. Let's talk about intimacy then, the amazing incentive and reward of all this hard work. Do you have any tips for busy parents who are, I
We
mean,
do.
How much time?
How much-
No. Yeah, as we mentioned before, we have three children, and so we know firsthand how
Mm,
parenting, as much as we love and chose it, and are thrilled that we did, can take a toll on your
mm,
intimacy, right? I know for a lot of women out there, if you were the one that was carrying, if you carried your child, if you were pregnant, birthed your child, breastfed, all of those things, your body can just feel like not your own and exhausted from touch, right? Like kind of this
mm,
touched out
mm,
feeling, and which can really take a toll on intimacy, and especially sexual and physical intimacy. And so what we really work with, and even just time, people, your kids take it a lot of time and then you're tired at the end of the day, is really identifying the different types of intimacy.
mm,
Call me your intimacy styles. We have
mm.
7 that we really work with.
That you
Yep.
came up with yourself? Are they your own styles
Yeah,
or?
I mean, if you
They're the 7 that we feel really encompass the vast majority of how people connect in their intimacy. And so like physical, sexual, emotional,
Mm,
spiritual, intellectual, experiential, right? So we did
okay.
not call names, but those are the 6 that we feel really encompass vast majority. And then when you do all those right, there's a 7th one called creation intimacy. And that's when
Mm,
we're really creating this life together and we're seeing the
mm.
success and we have the goals and we're reaching them. And that one we kind of did come up on our own. So I do like that one.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so we really work on acknowledging that there's all these different types, right? Back in the day, don't pick on James for a minute. He thought there was one type of intimacy. You can
Right.
probably guess which one that was. His favorite type, sex. And really recognizing that there's all these different types of intimacy, and helping people identify what is their intimacy style.
Mhm,
Similar to a love language or an erotic blueprint or those kind of things. What is my intimacy style? What are the couple that really fill my bucket and help me feel connected? And recognizing that there might be periods of time where some of those intimacy styles might not be available, right? I just had a
mm.
baby and I can't have sex for 6 weeks, said the doctor, right? So what
It's
other
more like 6
intimacy
months.
Yeah, sounds like
what
there's
are the
not.
other intimacy styles available? What are the ways we can stay connected when some of them aren't available? So,
Hmm. Yeah.
Definitely.
I used to really feel like I was going for sexual intimacy all the time because that
Mm,
was the only way I would feel that emotional connectedness and even the physical intimacy. And now, after kids and learning about these different styles, it's clear to me that I don't always want sex as my form of intimacy. I do want intimacy. And I'll even feel myself like, oh, I want intimacy. Like, let's go bid for sex. I'm like, fuck, man, I'm tired. You know?
yeah.
That's actually not what I want at all. I really just want to connect. I
connection.
want to snuggle on the couch or in bed, whatever that is. And so just giving yourselves permission as new parents, especially or parents in a busy phase of life, to explore other types of intimacy and to let those be enough.
Mm. So do
Couple
you,
more. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. Oh, actually, well, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. A couple more things I think too helpful for parents is we are strong proponents of early bedtimes for young children.
Okay.
Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
This is a good practical tip.
yeah, this is a good practical one. One of my counseling careers, one of my roles as a counselor was I was a school counselor. So developmentally, young children need lots of sleep in the first place.
Mm,
But having that early bedtime, 7:30, whatever it might be, allowed us then also when our kids were young to have time then to connect either
mm,
with ourselves or each other after we put the kids to bed,
Mm.
right? It was our time to rejuvenate. So maybe we put the kids to bed, I go take a bath, and then we're able to connect on the couch, right?
Mm.
And so that huge proponent of that. We're gonna and
You can add something about putting the kids early to bed. You're talking about putting the kids early to bed and then connecting.
yeah, so I think early bedtime for kids is a huge,
Mhm.
it's good for the kids, good for the parents, good for the self. And it was that time for us when our kids were young that we could then connect after the kids went to bed.
Mm.
Another big intimacy tip we use for, especially for parents or people in busy phases of their life, is scheduling intimacy.
Oh, that's
And
my next question. Great.
yeah,
Absolutely.
people always say, oh, well, scheduling sex isn't that, not sexy. And
Mm.
we always say, well, what's less sexy is not having sex. So
Okay.
yeah, so we are big proponents of scheduling whatever type of intimacy, whether it is sex or just some quality time together, and putting it in the calendar and holding it sacred, really valuing that time as a way to connect.
Hmm.
Mm.
And for couples out there who feel like they're in a really busy phase of life, we have a resource, just a
Mm.
checklist for how to get busy when you're too busy. So, Sex for Busy Couples.
Mm.
And it's just permission to schedule it, dial in one evening, and then just use somebody else's checklist, right? Because it matters who says
I can't
it,
hear you.
right? And so
Oh,
if
sorry, it just
I felt like I wasn't getting enough set to do it again. Yeah.
Let me open the door.
the microphone. So
We're good.
let's start again with the scheduling. So you were recommending it to some people?
Yeah, anybody who's in a phase of life that's
Oh,
too
busy
busy to have
couples.
sex.
That was it. The busy
Mhm.
couples
Busy couples.
checklist.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm. So do you think like just scheduling maybe just connection time and then seeing what happens? Because sometimes you can feel a bit maybe pressured to have sex. You might not feel like it. I mean,
Pressure is the
Yep.
biggest turnoff, right?
Mhm.
yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
and I think that's why people are adverse to scheduling it is because what if I don't feel like it?
Mhm.
Mm.
When most of us, especially the older we get, like the less and less we get that spontaneous desire. It's usually
Mm.
very
Responsive.
responsive, right? We want
Mm.
to build that desire, like stoking a fire, crock pot, that kind of an energy. And so I've got some clients and friends. What we do is, yeah, they just schedule intimacy time, and we're just going to lay in bed,
Mm.
and we might get naked, we might not, but we're just going to get here, and we're going to just drop in and see where this goes. And so removing that pressure can help out quite a bit.
Mhm. Another
Mm.
thing we'll do too is we'll say, okay, it looks like Wednesday is a good night for us based on the schedule, and our backup is Thursday night or Friday night, right? So if we get
Mm.
to Wednesday, it's like, I've got a headache, I'm tired. Can we do this Friday instead? Right. So sometimes we'll give flexibility that way because you want to understand that life happens, right? And illness happens and busy days happen and all those kind of things. So sometimes we'll pick 2 days, during the week that we think are going to be a good time to connect. And then, like we said, we can also, there's no pressure to connect in a certain way. It's just we
Mm.
want to connect. We want to carve out time for each other. Which type of intimacy is available now that we're here, right?
Mm. So your clients, would you say they were people who are, let's say, having troubles, or they just want to improve? What would you say would be the general profile of your clients?
Yeah. We love working with couples that are doing great, doing good,
Mm.
and just want to get to that next level, right?
Mm.
Want to up level.
We
Mm.
work with couples that are going to be married for life. They are all
Mm.
in, ride or dies. Now, that doesn't mean they're
Mm.
perfect,
Uh-huh.
right? But what it means is that they are going to show up for themselves, they're going to show up for each other, and they know that there's this beautiful, greater connection that's available and a greater dream for their life that they can achieve if only they just get a little bit of that oomph, right? That person or those people who are going to hold them accountable to their greatness,
Mm.
right? So the people we work with, they're showing up really good and they're doing the best they can with what they've got, and they just want somebody to hold them accountable to that greatness that's inside.
Have you got any
A lot of times,
amazing transformation stories you can share?
oh yeah. So Megan.
Mm.
Yeah. So one of our she posts a lot about us online. So
Oh,
I
it's
feel
okay.
like I have permission to share. But we have a couple we worked with for actually a couple years. Their inspiring story of they separated actually for
Mm.
6 months. and then decided to make it work, decided to get back together. And so they came to us when they had fairly recently gotten back together and said, yep, we're in this, we're going to make it work. And they obviously had a lot of love for each other. And yeah, and really where they needed some help was in the intimacy department with that connection with their physical and sexual intimacy.
And specifically the scar tissue and the hurt that had been caused through financial mistrust
Oh,
in
wow.
previous years.
Yeah.
So financial mistrust was what was in the way of their intimacy. And not just like the one not trusting the other, but also the somebody feeling guilt and shame and unworthiness. And so really helping to transform that into like, I am an amazing partner and I deserve all of this, and so do they.
Mm.
Yeah. So we worked on getting some of the obstacles out of the way, healing some of the past hurts that were standing in the way of their intimacy. And they also wanted to start a family. And when you're not connecting, at least sexually, it's very hard to start a family.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the success story is they now have 9-month-old twins.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and she somewhat jokingly, somewhat seriously is like says we're the reason they have twins, which they obviously
Okay.
did all the hard work there. But it was lovely to help them and to see them now be at a place of getting everything they really hoped and dreamed for. So
Mm.
And what intimacy coaching gets to do is to transform holistically every aspect of the relationship.
Mm.
Because when we come in and get to permission and consent to work on your connection and intimacy, it brings up everything that's getting in the way,
Uh-oh.
right? We could have better sex, or we could have better emotional intimacy if they were home at 5:59 or texting me,
Mm.
right?
or my mother-in-law wasn't living with us or
Okay.
whatever it is, right?
Or if we could get heal of the financial wounds that have happened in the past. And so it's just there's every transformation is slightly different, and it always ends the same, which is better connection, more intentional intimacy, and helping everything else to feel worth it.
You've had a couple that you've thought this is a lost cause and then they've surprised you.
Lost cause and they surprised us.
I'm
In a
still
positive
open to
way.
surprise.
In a
Yeah.
positive way. You thought, oh my God, why are these people together? And then they're like, wow, actually, that must be
No,
really, yeah.
we don't typically get a lot of that. We did have one couple come to a retreat that kind of snuck through the door, really
Mm.
represented, said the right things, and they just weren't all in as they said. Um, and it's still a privilege to get to help them.
Mm.
We've helped some couples in their relationship a little faster because they step into our container and they realize that this isn't the right container. And if this isn't the right container and that's not where we want to go, then what are we doing here?
Mm.
And I would say some of the surprises more have been not necessarily that we were surprised they stayed together, but we've had a few couples that have worked with us that have been older and been together for 40 years. And one of our clients, he says they're having the best sex of their life now after being
Wow.
married 40 years. And so some of that, it can be somewhat of a surprise, like, oh, like these couples have been together a long time and we still have I love to see that these tools can still work for them as well,
Absolutely.
right? How long they've been together, and you can found new levels and depth of intimacy and connection after decades together, and that's beautiful. And I love to see that. So
It's very inspiring, yeah. So how do you work then? You work with couples together and then do one-on-ones with the couple separately? How do you
We
work?
do 2-on-2 tandem couples coaching, right? And so
Okay.
the vast majority of our work is the two of us and the two of you doing live Zoom calls.
Okay.
Now, based off of what we're doing,
Mm.
I will do a lot of times, pretty much every situation, I'm going to do a break off with the men. We're going to do one-on-one
Ah,
men, and we're going to do one-on-one women's. So we can really install some programming that allows us to do that couples work a little together.
and
okay.
if it's a same gender couple, we, are more like, okay, which one are you resonating with more? Usually there's one partner that resonates more with me and one with James. We found that's pretty typical. And so we might break off in ways that just make sense and so that we can work on stuff sometimes without the partner present.
Mm.
Sometimes it can be easier to really dive into the nitty gritty, and then we
Mm.
get to bring that kind of better version of ourselves back to our partner.
And what about your retreats then? Are it several couples or just one couple? How does it work?
Several, yeah. We usually
They're
do
intimate, small,
five,
five
six
couples.
couples, something like that. Keeps it intimate. Retreats are really fun because one of the things that the feedback we get from couples that come is they love, we do some work off separately and the individual couples kind of break off and we go around to support them in their individual work. And then we come back together as a group to debrief. And most couples say that is their favorite part of the retreat is getting to interact with the other couples and see what they're going through and get advice, couples to couple will give advice. Or, oh, when our kids were young, this is something we tried. Or when
Okay.
my mother-in-law was this is what we tried, right? And so that is a beautiful, there's kind of a mastermind that's created when you have a group of couples that are together, that are all being intentional, that are all really wanting to thrive in their relationship. It's special.
Mm, amazing. So I watched this amazing series on HBO called Tell Me You Love Me. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God. It
Check
was
it out.
so good. It was actually a therapist, this older woman. She's probably about in her 80s now. I think it was like 2007 this was actually filmed. And she was seeing three different couples who were very different. And it was kind of known for the very explicit sex scenes, but when you watch it, you realize that the emotional implications of sex. For example, there was one couple who hadn't had sex for a year, and even though they're in the same bed, it's just like there's this wall. Like, why can't we just touch each other? It was just this invisible wall was there. And there was another couple who was trying for a baby, and that's obviously one of the least sexiest things ever. All this pressure, like, and all these tests, and it was just like very unsexy. And I think that's what I admire about that is the couples they're all in, but they're really suffering every month with the period. And then there's another couple who was a young couple who broke up, and the woman was like using sex to get attention or affection. So it was like the therapist seeing all these couples, and even though you can be seduced by all the naked skin and all the intimacy that's not typical in your average American soap opera, it was just wow, the emotional implication of each couple was huge. I mean, how would you? I'm sure you've had couples who have had sexless marriages, and that's a very common problem. What advice would you give, or what have you given in the past?
Well, sex for me and for these types of couples, I think, is one of the greatest sources of pain and
Mm,
pleasure in their
mm,
entire life.
mm,
So coming across folks that have had such a disconnect and it's just
mm,
feeling awkward and they don't know how to come close together again, I think you can warm up to that intimacy,
mm,
right? So it's, well, what kind of, if you're still together after not having sexual intimacy for a year, there's some type of intimacy that is working.
mm,
So what is working, right?
mm,
And how can we lean into that and work on growing that? Because you're where attention goes, energy flows. Right.
mm,
So I think starting slow, it is important to move at the pace of the slowest nervous system.
mm.
In that case, it might be hard to figure out who's the slower, but to really take your time. And I think to also, again, it matters who says it, right? And so to have somebody who's going to help you break through that ice, what do you think?
Mm,
Yeah, I think, yeah, to your point, we look at, what other intimacy styles and buckets can we fill? Because we feel like when you start filling up some, it tends to raise the other ones, right? So if we're having a lot of emotional intimacy, then, it can spill over to like more physical touch, more hand holding, right? That kind of stuff. So, filling all the intimacy buckets, I think, can then help in the sexual intimacy area. And then, yeah, just those strategic exercises to help. We might start with just a non-sexual, but you're
mm,
going to rub each other's shoulders for 5 minutes
mm.
each, right? Like, how do we just break the crunchiness of touching each other again?
Yeah.
And like you said, when my partner's saying, I want sex and we're not having it, it can feel like pressure and shut me down, right?
Mm,
If I have a relationship coach that's saying, hey, you're just going to give each other 5-minute shoulder massages, it's like, okay, we can do that.
mm,
It's different than when it's from your partner and it can feel like all these other implications are being made.
Have
mm.
you heard of the 3 minute game by Dr.
No, it
Benjamin?
sounds interesting. 3 minute
Great.
game. Is that yours
No,
or is
don't be
that just
fooled.
exists? Is it, did you make it up or is it like a,
No, nope.
Dr. Betty
Betty
Martin.
okay,
Martin
Betty
made it
Martin.
up.
okay.
Yep. Google it. She's got a YouTube video on it and everything.
Absolutely. And what it does is it's called the 3 minute game. Don't be fooled. It's 12.
Okay.
But there's the four quadrants of consent,
Mm,
giving and receiving,
mm.
taking and allowing.
Ah.
Okay. So taking is if I'm touching Angela how I want to touch her, and
Mm.
she's letting me, right? Versus
Okay.
giving,
Consensually.
yeah,
Yeah.
consensually, right? It's a game of consent, right? And
Mm.
so in this case, it's like, let's just get used to touching each other. Let's get used to asking for what we want. I want you to scratch my back. I want you to rub my shoulders. I want you to rub my right foot, right? And so when we can start to get that communication going, plus the what do I actually desire, and
Mm.
then give them a structure and a safety net of a timer.
Okay.
This is your job for 3 minutes, just receive. Okay.
Mm.
You don't have to think about what you're going to do next. We'll
Yeah.
get to that after the timer goes off. But while the timer's on, this is your safe place, just being in receipt or being in the giving mode if that's where you're at. That can really help just get past that it's an energetic feel. Like there's just a
Mm.
palpable energy that's like I don't feel safe to touch you. I don't feel allowed to touch you, right? I don't feel
Mm.
comfortable. So this can
Mm.
bring that back.
So I've been in a relationship where I was the one wanting more, and I was also in a relationship where I was the one avoiding it. So I've been on both sides, and it's really awful. Like the rejection you feel, like from when your partner doesn't desire you. That's just awful. You feel awful, and that means you don't feel comfortable being naked in front of them, and it just implicates a lot of areas of your relationship. And also the other side where it was me, I didn't want it as much. When I'm a sex toy reviewer, imagine like it was like, how can I be a sexpert and not really? I'm avoiding sex with my partner. It was very difficult. I felt like every touch, every massage was just had some kind of ulterior motive, and that was a real turn off. I think that's the problem with these things. Even if it's just like, oh, you want a massage? Yeah, I want a massage, but then he just he just wants sex.
Yep.
It was,
Yeah. And we put specific boundaries. Like when we have couples first start the 3 minute game, we tell them to start at the PG level. Okay.
okay.
And clothes are on. There's no expectation of this leading anywhere, right? And then we work up to the R or the X or the triple X, wherever
Okay.
you're at on
Yeah.
that rating scale. But yeah, and we believe it's important to set boundaries on and have those conversations. Like, is this just a massage or is this leading somewhere? And what are we open to? Because yeah, like it's going to be hard to enjoy the massage if that's all I want it to be. And I'm worried that he's thinking it's going to turn into something more, right? I can't even enjoy my massage now because I'm like, is he thinking this is going somewhere? I'm not really up for sex tonight, right?
Mhm.
So that open communication and setting those rules of the game up front can really relieve a lot of that pressure.
Yeah. What it feels like a whole lot of this amazing conversation is about the sexual development,
Mm.
right? And not personal development, not couples development. We can do couples development and personal development, but when we come together in our sexual development as a couple, that's where the magic of growth and healing can happen the most,
Mm.
right? And it gives us permission to connect with each other on new deep levels with vulnerability, right? And the sexual development and the work and healing we do today, it's not necessarily it doesn't last a lifetime. We're going to get to do it again in a few years or a few months or whenever something else comes up. Because if I'm avoiding sex or if I'm always using a massage to initiate it, it's giving us a clue as to what's happening inside my own body, what's happening inside my own emotions, right? And how's that coming out? And how is sex the mirror or at least the illuminating where the next round of energy gets to go?
Mm.
Yeah, and I think to, his point about I don't think it's that sex is the most important type of intimacy. Like for
Mm.
me, it's emotional is mine, right? And
Mm.
but I think to James' point is that there is so much tied up in sex, right? In our culture, and it requires a great deal of vulnerability. It requires, to do it well,
Self-esteem.
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And so really when we start working in that area, it brings up where are the weaknesses, where are the pain points, where is the vulnerability, where is the pain, right? And
Mm.
the idea of end up marrying our unfinished business, I think is also beautiful because when our partner triggers those things in us, it also allows us then to heal them. Right. And so it's that beautiful piece of where most of our wounding is relational, and now we get to heal it relationally. And sex can be that, point where it just brings up a lot. And so couples are able to actually work through some of these other things in order to get this amazing, epic sexual intimacy.
Mm. One thing that people have come to me with a lot over the years is how do I tell my partner about my secret fetish? Having these secret desires or fetishes that might not be your normal or standard conventional practices, and they feel that they can't come out as a foot fetishist or something. Do you have any tips about that, about someone who's got a certain desire that maybe their partner might not be into and they want to stay monogamous? I mean, do you have any tips about that?
Oh, we've found a few of these. We call them won'ts. These are the won'ts.
Okay. Mhm.
There's a one of our mentors in this department, Alexa Bowditch, at That Sex Chick. She had a want, will, and a won't list. These are
Okay.
all the things I want. And so these are all the things I want to do as a giver
Yeah.
or a receiver. These are all the things I will do if you
Mm,
want it. These are things I
mm.
won't do.
Okay.
And
It's a
That's a
checklist.
great list. That's a great
Yeah.
idea. Mm,
Yeah.
it's super helpful. Woman named Kimmy Inch. She is a somatic therapist slash conscious kink dominatrix. She has
okay.
a kink checklist. And
Mm,
what these checklists do is the first time I gave Angela that list, I was super nervous. Like you, I'm like, I've got these things, and what is she gonna do? Is she gonna
mm,
reject me? Am I gonna be embarrassed? Should I be shame? And what it did was, even though they weren't all wants or wills for her, I at least got to show myself. And I didn't have to come out and say it. Like I wasn't like,
mm,
hey, this is something I want to do. I just checked a box that, yes, I would
mm,
be into that. And then we got to talk about it.
mm,
And I think the important thing for me when I have these types of fetishes and kinks, I just want to be seen. I want to be heard,
mm,
right? She might go, oh, that's okay. Great. Thank you for sharing that with me. Like, what would that look like? Right.
mm,
Or she's like, that's a won't for me right now, but like, I'm really glad you shared that. And what I notice is that even if I can't do the thing that I shared, because I have now shared it and I've told her about it, I feel more accepted by her. I feel like
mm,
it's a part of our relationship that doesn't have to hide anymore. And that's really important.
And I think for the partner receiving that, right, if you're maybe the less kinky one in the relationship, just recognizing that for your partner to share it is an act of vulnerability, right? They are showing you this part of them that might feel scary to show. And so my job is to be curious of, because there might be, maybe I can't fulfill that whole fantasy, but maybe I can this part. I'm good with this part. I can do
mm.
that, right? And also to just a phrase I've used or we've used is like, all of you is welcome here, right? Like, so
Okay.
I feel honored if he is willing to share this thing with me that he doesn't share with most people. It feels like such an honor, right?
Mm,
That he trusts me with that he can open up to me. And I want to receive that with love, even if I can't deliver on it, right? I receive it with love.
It makes
mm,
my body, every time I do it
mm.
too, I get body tremors and my body's starting to tremor right now. Because I've held in those things for so long and they've been such a
Yeah.
source of shame and guilt.
Yeah.
Um, so it helps release me to be more available for Angela and connection.
Mm.
Uh,
I think what you found too is sometimes even just by speaking it, you don't even necessarily need to do the thing.
or I didn't maybe even want to. That's the
Yeah.
difference between a fantasy and a desire.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Have you heard the phrase "Don't yuck somebody's yum"?
No, but I love it.
That's that's when I would also, just remind that everybody listening, no matter whatever your yum is or others, just don't yuck somebody
You
else's yums.
weirdo.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so weird. Yeah, I can imagine, like, just like that's the last thing you want to hear, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
if someone's like shamed almost for having a particular fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I think removing, if you're the one receiving it or hearing it, right, removing any feeling of pressure or obligation to do that thing, right?
Mm.
Because I think that's where sometimes it comes from. It's like, oh, you want this and I can't do that. Ugh. Right. And it's
Yeah.
like the,
I'm
the
not
great
enough.
rejection. Yeah. And the job is more just to hear it, right? And listen and be curious and not to feel like you have to perform that thing.
Mm.
And then once the pressure's off, you might actually realize you could do that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It would actually be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of questions I ask everyone in my on my podcast. What is the book that changed your life? Do you have any? Oops, it's frozen.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. You're
Yeah.
back.
Okay. Do you have any books that you recommend or in this topic that have been influential in your career? Your camera's frozen. Oh yeah, okay, it's okay now. Uh,
Great. The Way of the Superior Man has helped me
Okay.
a lot
Mm,
for how to show up energetically in that space, how to
hmm
hold how to hold that container.
hmm
And then on the female side, how to come as you are, Emily Nagoski's book.
Okay. Mm,
Reading that from my perspective really helped me
mm,
understand how to be married to this beautiful woman and how to understand her desire. And the brakes and gas was revolutionary for me.
Okay, and you?
Yeah, I would double click on Come As You Are. I think that's a great book for any couple where there's at least one female in the partnership, understanding female desire. And I do like Terry Real's work. He has some good books out there just helping, I think, couples, yeah, understand each other. So.
Amazing. What's the quote or affirmation that you live by?
Let it be easy.
Okay. Is that possible?
Sometimes it's easier
Maybe
than
more of
others.
a hope. That's the hope.
Okay.
I think I often remind myself, it comes pretty easily to me, but that I generally think people are doing the best with what they've got. You
Okay.
know, we're all coming to a situation with different tools, different resources, different experiences, and I do believe that most people are doing the best they can with what they've got, right?
Mhm.
But-
Amazing. So where can people find you?
The internet or the
Okay.
Sacred Valley of Peru, if you're local.
Okay. You're
Yeah,
doing retreats down there. Are you making the most of your time there to do retreats there?
we are in planning mode for a retreat here in
Okay.
Edmonton. Yeah. Yeah, but loveintentionally.co on
Mhm.
Instagram. It's probably the best place to find us. You can also find us on our websites, loveintentionally.com.
Yeah, but the Instagram is one of the best places, and then we have a weekly, we call it a love letter, that
Oh,
we
love
send
it.
out intimacy tips, tricks, and just tools that are helpful to us in the moment and that are going to bring you to that connection you desire.
Yeah, and you can sign up for that on our website, loveintentionally.com, or just send us a message on Instagram and we'll get you on the love letter list so you get your weekly tips.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on here on the
Thank
Orgasmic
you for having us.
Lifestyle.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.